This is Fountainhead Forum 30. I have Ezra Wyrick, who is the editor of Mises Magazine with the Liberty Youth Coalition. He's 18 years old and he lives in East Tennessee. How are you, Ezra?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
So, how did you get into the Liberty movement?
That's an interesting question. It's actually a difficult answer. So I got first involved. Well, not really involved, but I first got interested in libertarianism, liberty, first exposed, you might say, during Ron Paul's 2012 presidential run. But you have to keep in mind that was when I was 8 years old, so that did not really register. And I was raised conservative, so that's kind of what came natural. And then 2018, start doing a little bit more research after the establishment, was revealed how bad they were during Trump administration. Started doing a little bit more research, started reading some of the guys that Ron Paul had talked about in his speeches a long time ago. And yeah, it kind of came natural, especially it was kind of interesting because I started reading 2018, and then all throughout 2019 I'm reading, and then 2020 happens, and the COVID lockdowns start happening. And prior to that, I would have called myself something of a conservatarian, but after the COVID lockdowns started happening, and you just really saw the government overreach and how bad it really was, and how they would stop at nothing to use this virus to lock everyone down and to take everybody's liberty away. It just kind of came natural that, yeah, libertarianism, voluntarism is the way to go.
Yeah, that's definitely very interesting. I think 8 or 9 is when people start to become aware of politics.
That is correct.
They're turning on the TV and seeing this stuff. And say, oh, this is out here. But yeah, that's very interesting. I so you saw wrong. So yeah, and so 2000, seeing the corruption in 2018, was there a particular event that catalyzed this, or one particular moment that made you notice this, or
I don't think so. There were quite a few particular moments. The whole Trump administration, after 2016, um, pretty much whenever the bombs start dropping on Syria, and you have a very anti-establishment guy who kind of goes along with whatever the establishment is saying because it's more convenient than going against the establishment after running on an anti-establishment message. It just really, I think, speaks to the corruption in Washington and what is often not so affectionately referred to as the swamp. And you have a guy that wants to come in and talks about draining the swamp, but that really didn't pan out. So
yeah,
you saw the establishment fight back, and then you saw not too much resistance from the end of the guy that said that he was going to drain the swamp. And once the swamp starts fighting back, you don't see any resistance to that, or very little.
yes, it definitely seems like controlled opposition. And then in 2020, he goes out and promotes the most anti-liberty thing that's ever been done. And if I had to ask why he did it, I think he initially used it to try to demonize the Chinese, but then it just blew up into this thing that he lost control of. Yeah, and I mean, and I'm amazed when people who oppose this are still making excuses for him. That's what I don't get. But yeah, I'm really curious to ask. I'm thinking about Ayn Rand and being. I think she was 12 years old when the Bolsheviks nationalized her father's pharmacy.
Hmm.
She watches the revolution in 1917, watches the Russian Civil War all as a teenager, and I think her entire philosophy was this pursuit to try to make sense of what happened there. What is going to Where are the teenagers who saw all of this going to be in 20 years? Are they all going to be libertarians? Are they all going to go into Stockholm syndrome and be on the far left? What do you think is going to happen with what do you think is going to be the long-term reaction to this?
That's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I guess the most attractive answer would be that I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can say this, I can say that if people that grew up during that time period, during the COVID lockdowns and everything, weren't affected by that, I don't think there's anyone that wasn't affected by that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you saw, just as you know, Ayn Rand saw her father's or her father's pharmacy nationalized. Excuse me. Her the teenagers that grew up during the COVID lockdowns probably saw their parents' businesses shut down because of the lockdown, and they probably saw, you know, the financial upheaval that happened because of those businesses being shut down. And obviously, there's the school factor and a lot of other things. So I think, yeah, it's going to have an effect. Will it have the effect that it will make every teenager in today's time out to be a libertarian in 20 years? I doubt it. But I think they'll definitely remember that, and maybe it will foster a little bit of distrust of government, a healthy dose of cautious optimism when it comes to government. But as far as being libertarian or, you know, being anti-government, I don't know if that's the way that young people will go. Now, the organization that I work for, the Liberty Youth Coalition, that is our mission, to get young people on board with the libertarian idea. But I don't know if COVID was enough to push young people that direction. It's odd because you would think that young people would be completely rebellious because it would have that rebellious streak, right? And then COVID happens, and it almost seems like a conformity streak.
That's very interesting too. You didn't see any kids, doing things crazy or anything like that. Uh, what teenagers do you think got harmed the most by this?
Yeah, the one.
You think maybe it was the? I mean, I suppose the teenagers who were just kind of play video games all the time weren't, but I can imagine the teenagers who just live for their social life probably. Or, I don't know what. Who do you think was hurt the most by this? By these
Um,
policies?
it's odd because in general, Gen Z tends to be kind of introverted. It's not really introverted as in the sense that they don't have social interaction. They just have a different kind of social interaction. Like, you know, with the rise of social media and the internet, you can talk to 1,000 people at one time, right? Or
Yeah.
several thousand people at one time. Like if you do a live stream or, you know, so yeah, they have social interaction, but young people, particularly Gen Z, live for their social life and not just their social life with friends. They tend to live more for their social media life. So I feel like a lot of young people weren't as affected because, in general, the social interaction that they get is online, and that didn't shut down.
Wow. Speaking as a teenager, we didn't have online, so other than one telephone in the house that every and if you ever have a situation where your mom picks up and
In
she
the
hears,
other room.
yeah, in
Hmm.
the other room and hears a girl saying bad words and she's wondering who, yeah, that happened, yeah, that's. But anyway, uh, that's real. I guess I just don't know how different things are, but I remember sometimes in my neighborhood I'll see kids out at the bus stop and I'm just thinking, boy, they're awfully quiet. They're not
Hmm.
because we didn't have the phones. It's as if you're forced to talk to people. You're out there talking to people. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I don't know how I would have handled it back then, but we we grew up. So tell me more about the Liberty Youth Coalition. What's that organization?
So the Liberty Youth Coalition was created, kind of stems out of misdirection in the leadership at YAL. There's a whole situation there which I won't get into. However, the Liberty Youth Coalition, it's dedicated to what we like to call the four foundations. And
Yeah,
that's the four foundations are mutual aid, essentially charity work, you know, getting involved in the community in ways that impact the community in a positive way. We strive for mass mobilization, particularly among young people. We want to get people out there. We need activists. We need people that are willing to take time out of their day to go out and hold up a sign and protest something that's not right. We need to educate young people in particular. We need to educate them. we need to educate them in a way that they understand what is going on and how the state in that of itself is not a good institution. And we need to essentially, I guess, rewire their brains from the uh, the school indoctrination to think that the state is this guiding hand that's going to take care of you throughout life, and realize that the state is really a foot in a boot that is going to be standing on you for the rest of your life. And
Yes.
our fourth foundation is we want to elect people. Restoration. We want to elect people that are going to actually pursue this mindset. So long as the state exists, we feel that it's best that we have people in power instead of statists have people in power. Therefore, we intend to endorse and actively support candidates that support our mission. So restoration, mutual aid, education, and mass mobilization. Those are our foundations. We have a good group of people. We just recently started working on Mises Magazine, which is going to be a digital newsletter. I'm spearheading that effort as the director and chief editor. And we are looking. We are incorporated right now in the state of North Carolina. So we are looking to expand, and we have several regions where we have people involved all over the country. And this is growing, and this is really getting to be something that's really started to take off.
So the Liberty Youth Coalition, is there anybody else, any names we know who are behind that, or?
I'm not sure, honestly, because most
Yeah.
of the people that are involved with us were at one point involved with YAL.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you would know the CEO, Emmanuel Ruiz.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you would know him, but most of the people that are with us now were with YAL or another organization, or at one point, or they're just young people that wanted to get involved.
Are these people who have? I've heard some interviews with Reed Cooley, who used to be involved with YAL. Are these people involved with the Liberty Youth Coalition for some of the same reasons that he left?
So Reed is a great guy. He's working on some stuff himself right now.
Yeah, he's with LP National. Yes.
Yes, he is the comms director for LP National, as a matter of fact. So Reed Cooley was offered a spot on the board of the Liberty Youth Coalition. But I mean, obviously, when the LP National job came along, he accepted that, and I don't blame him one bit, because it's a very high paying job, and it's a very brand building job. So I absolutely support his decision there. I think I would make the same decision. But yes, he's aware of the Liberty Youth Coalition. He knows who we are. He knows the guy that runs it. He knows all the people here, most of the people here. And yeah, he's not directly involved, but as far as knowing who we are, knowing what our mission is, and being on board, Reed Cooley is with us.
Oh yeah. Were you involved with YAL or for a while, or?
Was not, actually.
Okay.
I wasn't involved with any organization until I was involved with the Liberty Youth Coalition.
Yeah.
Most of what I did was just, be kind of a voice on Twitter, and then I realized that, this isn't cutting it. I have to actually actively do something. I was tired of being introduced as that 18-year-old from East Tennessee. It was more, I needed an official title, right? I had to feel like I was doing something. So yeah, that's pretty much that situation. And then I
Yeah.
started working with the Liberty Youth Coalition. It's a very, it's a very chill job. It's not an easy job at some points, but it's a pretty chill experience, and I enjoy it. And I get to come on podcasts and talk about the organization and talk about what we're doing and try to get people on board. It's great. It's a great day job.
Yeah, it's a good day job if you can do it and you enjoy it, and you certainly feel like you're making a difference.
Mm-hmm. It's very
How'd you
self-fulfilling.
how'd you find your what was how did you find your fellow libertarians? I assume social media was a way you
Social
found
media.
them. Yeah.
Social media at first, and then in person. People reach out to me. They'll be like, "Hey, you want to go grab a coffee? I live blah 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 miles from you." And I'd be like, "Hey, yeah, let's go do it." So I meet with people in person. I talk with people online. I've connected with probably, I don't know, thousands of people, thousands of libertarians online. So
Yeah.
yeah, I built a pretty substantial following among the liberty community. Um, I'm particularly interested, in the Mises Institute, and people like that, the Mises Institute, several other
Yeah.
organizations, the Foundation for Economic Education, and propagating their message in particular, because I feel like they are organizations that are absolutely dedicated to liberty, particularly in the economic sense.
Yeah.
And that is something that I 100% support.
Yeah. It's more specific. Where'd you find them more specifically? Was it Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or?
Probably when I started Twitter in 2021, because when I had these ideas as a libertarian, I thought, oh, well, libertarians, maybe we're kind of fringe, or maybe we're not, there's not really too many of us. And then I got on Twitter and I started talking about things. And then I realized, hey, I mean, there's actually quite a few of us. It's just being a libertarian or a voluntarist or whatever you want to call it, it's like being the only sober person in the car, but no one will ever let you drive. So, I mean, you have all the right ideas, but no one will really listen. And it can be tiresome at times trying to. You encounter, like I mentioned on the Tom Woods show, you encounter caricatures of what you believe, and you have to dispel notions about what you believe that aren't true. And it's just a constant battle of fighting against caricatures of your ideology and trying to actually, present the picture of what your ideology actually is and not what people think it is. Particular problem you encounter among conservatives is the fact that they think we're all a bunch of pot smoking hippies, and then the liberals think we're just, I don't know. I guess they think we're just a bunch of nutty zealots that are out here and never gonna amount to anything, never gonna make any change. So they see us as like a neutral. They don't even see us as a positive or a negative. They see us as a neutral. So conservatives see us as hippies for the most part. Liberals see us as irrelevant. So essentially, there are a lot of us, but unless we can unite, form together, form a coalition, do something to actually make change, then we're just going to be screaming into the void. And I'm not satisfied with that condition.
Yeah, I wouldn't be satisfied with that condition either. So, uh, yeah, obviously, I don't know what I would have, back in the. I remember back in the pre-internet days, it actually took work to find a lot of these organizations, and now with the web,
Yep.
usually, the really the one organization that probably was more of the outreach organization was the Libertarian Party.
CLP.
Because
Yep.
they were more visible. When I was 17, I did. It was 1988, and I would have voted for Ron Paul in 1988 if I could have. But
Hmm.
so I did know about the Libertarian Party, but that was it. After that, I remember finding. I actually found Loom Panics Unlimited, which was a book publisher at the time, and you find these other these booksellers who put out book catalogs, and then I go from there and find other organizations. And the first time I actually went to an event was a summer seminar at the Foundation for Economic Education, which was uh, an absolutely wonderful experience that no younger libertarian will ever experience nowadays, because they had this mansion in Irvington, and we all got to stay in the mansion for the seminar for the week.
Oh,
So
really?
it was like we were all a family for 1 week, or maybe like a frat house. The women had their separate quarters somewhere else.
I'm sure.
We shared a few bathrooms and stuff. And I mean, $400 for 6 days. It wasn't a lot of money, and it was just good food, and wonderful people. And that was, was a few minutes to go from the classroom to your bedroom. So if you forgot something, it was easy to go back and get something. It was just, I called that the best week of my life, because everybody there was so nice at the foundation. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who there aren't even. I mean, Bettina B. and Graves, Ed Opitz, Hans Holes. Quite a few of those people aren't even alive anymore. But anyway, that was a Lawrence Reed, of course, was there, and he was president of FEE for a while. But yeah, FEE's a great organization, and I don't think a lot of these other libertarian organizations would not exist without FEE. But that's my soapbox. Anyway, so what other organizations is Liberty Youth, or the Liberty Youth Coalition, working with or partnering with? Or
So we have partnered with the Texas A&M liberty oriented campus organization. They are working with us. We're hoping to get a few more campuses on board. As far as any other organizations that we're partnering with, we have a few, lesser known. They tend to be conservative organizations that we partnered with. Just put aside differences for a while and not bite each other's heads off over immigration, and actually, work forward on the things that we agree on. Um, we have partnered with a few conservative organizations, a few kind of nationalist conservative organizations, in the sense that they are you know free market but more nationalist leaning when it comes to foreign affairs and that kind of thing. And those are things that we have to hash out, and but we try not to bring up the differences so much. We tend to just try to work forward on what we can agree on, and then tear each other's heads off on the other stuff whenever that is settled.
Yeah, yeah. If you just focus on one issue, it's easy to work with a lot of people. But
Hmm.
then you just kind of part ways and say, well, and you just don't talk about the other issues because it's going
Hmm.
to raise a contentious thing.
When it comes to drug decriminalization, criminal justice reform, I can work with a Democrat all day. And then whenever we start talking about economics and the realities of economics and all this other stuff, social issues, I cannot get on board. But if we can work on one issue, then yeah, I'm absolutely willing to work with anyone as long as we agree on the issue. We're both passionate about it, and I think that is positive, to work with people that you don't necessarily agree with 100% of the time. I think if you work with people that you agree with 100% of the time, you'll tend to create some sort of a proverbial echo chamber, in the sense that the people that you are around and the people that you are working with are propagating and parroting your views back to you rather than challenging you on anything. And I don't think that's a healthy environment. So yeah, I absolutely think it's positive to work with people that you don't necessarily agree with 100% of the time, or even 90, 80, 70, 60% of the time.
Yeah, you can get into that situation where you have people where you just have your echo chamber, and I don't,
Hmm.
and that really you end up kind of ghettoizing yourself, and you don't really take on anything new. To a certain degree, I think that's happened with the some of the people in the objectivist movement, like the Ayn Rand Institute, which is just an absolute tragedy. I know you said you were reading your what books have you read, or who's been influencing you the last few years?
Better question. What books haven't I read?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a whole lot of
um,
books out there.
yeah, there's a lot of books out there, particularly related to libertarianism and Austrian economics, which I am a fan of, by the way. Um, I think that probably the most influential books have been. Let's see if I'm going to narrow it down to four. Okay, I'm going to try to narrow it down to four. I would say the most influential books have been number one, The Law by Frederick Bastiat. Um, that is a very, very good book. It's very influential. It changes the way you think about things. And yeah, it's a masterpiece. And this is in no particular order, by the way. But number two, I would say Anatomy of the State by Muriel Rothbard, because everybody that's involved with libertarianism or voluntarism or any of these liberty-oriented ideologies has got to read Anatomy of the State at least once, right? I mean, this is it's like a light bulb goes on in your head when you read Anatomy of the State. It's like, yeah, the state is not a good institution. And then he talks about all the misconceptions about the state and how people will say that we are the government. Well, and then he gives a really good example. He gives a really good example. This was one of the things that particularly really dawned on me and really influenced me. He talked about how this concept that the people are the government, and this is something that conservatives say, the people are the government. We the people, right? We the people, we're the government, and we're going to govern ourselves through these elected representatives. Okay, so he gives this example. If the people are in fact the government and the people make up the state in that they elect their own representatives, then we can assume that the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust killed themselves, committed suicide, because the people are the government, right? And then it's just the light bulb clicks on. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I mean, obviously, these people didn't murder themselves, they were murdered by another entity. But if we make the argument that they are the government, then we're saying that they committed suicide. But that's the second book that I
Yes.
think would be most influential. I would have to go with Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson, which is just a great um, primer on economic thought. Hazlitt does not get enough credit for his writings. He was a fantastic Austrian thinker. Tends to be one of my favorite Austrian thinkers, I think, if not the favorite. I know a lot of people would say Rothbard or Mises, and I absolutely would give those two their due. But I think Hazlitt was just a very intellectual mind, and he has an amazing life story. So I'm gonna show my bias a little bit there toward Hazlitt. So economics in one lesson, the law, anatomy of the state. If I had to choose a fourth book, it would be pretty difficult. um, I would say that Omnipotent Government by Mises is close. Omnipotent Government, Road to Serfdom, right? Because Omnipotent Government was written by Mises, Road to Serfdom was written by Hayek, and they both follow the same plot line, talking about what led up to the rise of Hitler. And I think it's very important for libertarians to understand what makes a population want to uh, want to gravitate toward totalitarian, authoritarian people. And I think it's important to understand that the message that those authoritarian, totalitarian people are using to bring people in. So I feel like either Road to Serfdom or Omnipotent Government by Mises, I would have to go with a fourth book there. That would be my fourth book. But I think, um, I mean, I'm leaving out so many books. It's not even funny.
Yes.
I have read everything from Mises, Rothbard, Rand. I've read it all. So I've read Hayek's works, I've read Mises' works, I've read Rothbard's works, I've read Rand's works, I've read Bastier's works. I've read a lot of stuff. But if I had to narrow it down to four books, I'd say Anatomy of the State, I would say The Law, I would say Economics in One Lesson, and I would say either Omnipotent Government or Road to Serfdom. Take your pick there. Both fantastic books. If you want the more layman's version, go with Hayek. If you want the more intellectual version, go with Mises.
Yeah, Hayek is a very good book. I think that will definitely turn people on. I've also read Hazlitt Economics in One Lesson. Hazlitt used to actually write for the New York Times for a while, so
He did.
he was used to writing for a more mainstream audience. I think it's worth noting too that because Hayek and Mises were both from Austria, they were able to read. I don't know how much you would have read it, but they were able to certainly read, look at German news sources as well as
Hmm.
English speaking news sources regarding
And
what's happening in Germany.
I think if I'm not mistaken, a lot of Mises' works were originally written in German, had to be translated into English.
Yeah, they were. I think he supervised a lot of those translations because he was. Yeah, they were written
Hmm.
in Germany. Yeah, he went to. Mises saw a lot of things that were happening before they happened. He got
Hmm.
out of Austria. He got out of Austria. I think maybe around the time Dollfuss was murdered, which was fairly maybe 33 or 34, and then went to Switzerland. And he was
Hmm.
actually an advisor to Dollfuss for a while, which
He saw things were happening. He understood that the
yeah,
situation was becoming dire. So he
yeah,
got out. And it's a good thing that he did because he would have probably, well, almost certainly been sent to a concentration camp as a German citizen who also happened to be Jewish.
well, yeah,
So
well,
we might not
Austrian
have been
citizen,
exposed
yes,
to his works and to his thoughts if
yeah,
he had not fled when he did.
and an Austrian citizen who also did actually serve in the military in World War One.
Hmm.
If you ever read Mrs. von Mises' book, My Years with Ludwig von Mises, which
I've been wanting to read that for a
I
long
love
time, but
that
I've
book.
never gotten around to it. I read Economics and Moral Courage,
Yeah,
which is kind of Rockwell's
yeah.
shortened version. But I have not read that biography. I would like to read it, and I'm going to read it in the future. It's on my reading list.
There's a whole lot of stuff to read.
Hmm.
I don't read much anymore because I just spend so much time listening to podcasts anymore. But there is a lot of good stuff out there. I'm tempted to read Michael Malice's book, The White Pill, right now, just to see because I think Malice has become a great ambassador for liberty right
He
now.
has, yeah.
But
I've heard it. I've heard it's fantastic. I haven't ordered it yet, but
yeah,
you know,
also one book I'd add to it, and it seems to have become kind of forgotten right now, is The God of the Machine by Isabel Patterson. Uh,
The God of the Machine by Isabel Patterson.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah,
Now, where can you get that? Can you get that off Amazon or pretty much anywhere?
that might be. They might have uploaded that thing to the Mises Institute website.
Well, if they did, I'll definitely check that out.
It's also Patterson with one T. She was kind of a mentor to Ayn Rand, although she was a little bit. But that book really goes into the morality of capitalism and just how, there was this I didn't realize this until I didn't realize this at 18, but there was this I came to this realization that capitalism is the only system where you can have an Edison or a Benjamin Franklin.
Yes.
And
Because it incentivizes innovation and it incentivizes invention. If you have a socialist system, I mean, one of two things happen. Number one, you have no innovation because people don't have a drive to innovate and don't have a drive to invent new things because they don't face any reward for it. They'll just essentially be inventing it for the state and innovating for the state because the state in a socialist or a communist system controls all of that. They control everything. Everything is the state's by default or expropriate, right? So any new invention or innovation that comes along, it's the state's automatically. Or another thing that will happen is the socialists will suddenly become capitalists and they'll realize that in order to get innovation, in order to get inventions, we need to pay some people to invent and innovate for us. So they will contract inventors and they will actually reward them. And oftentimes they won't offer them much of a reward, but they'll offer them enough, or at the barrel of a gun, they'll force them to innovate. And that's why you see crumbling infrastructure in socialist utopias. You see inventions that sound good on the surface but really don't work in practice, yet they still use them. And a lot of inventions go away a few years after they're invented because they just don't work. Because in a socialist system or a communist system, if you're not completely stifling innovation, you're basically either incentivizing producers using money, which is a capitalist action, by the way, or you're doing it at the barrel of a gun. So either way, you don't have as much innovation as you do whenever you say, okay, use your mind to innovate. Use your mind. There's no gun barrel. The only incentive that will give you is that you'll get really rich if you invent something that changes people's lives and that people want. That is how you get people to innovate.
yeah, that's exactly how you do it. And certainly and it also allows people to be creative and go against established
Yes.
taboos. I mean, people said, oh, Franklin is messing with God's forces, by flying this kite in the thunderstorm. And it's like, okay, well, go ahead and do it anyway. And then there is a certain amount of competition. I mean, you get these prizes now for people who can build something faster than the others. You might get a grant to fund your project because it does often require a lot of resources to start these things up. But yes, so what else are you doing right now? Is it do you think are you out of high school now? Or are you still in?
I am.
Okay.
I am out of high school.
Yeah. So so you're out there in the real world now, just doing your liberty activism, or?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. That's what I do. I have some hobbies. I'm a knife collector. I'm way into knives. Anyone that knows me will tell you I'll see you. I'll be like, hey, let me show you this new knife I got. So, yeah, I am obsessed with knives and sharp objects. But other than that, yeah, I'm a liberty activist pretty much full time. That's just what I do. That's what comes natural. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I can make money doing. And in general, I'm having a positive impact, and it's very self-fulfilling.
I don't know if I've met any 18-year-olds ever who are making money a living as liberty activists. I certainly knew them who were volunteering, but if you're able to do that, you're definitely doing well. Do you think that? Yeah, you mentioned A&M. Texas A&M certainly has a reputation for being a more conservative campus. Do you think that there is any hope for academia at all?
Do you want the depressing answer, or do you want the
Go ahead and
me to
go ahead and
stumble around for 5 minutes and try to answer that question in a positive way? Is there any hope for academia? No. That's the short answer. There is no hope for academia. Now, is it possible for people that are particularly gifted to go into academia and try to, turn it around? Yeah. You can see you need a lot of people, though. You need a lot of people that adhere to free market economics. You need a lot of people that adhere to personal liberty and libertarian and voluntarist and, whatever you want to call it, whatever thought you want to call it. You need people like that to get into academia, and you need them to be professors, and you need them to be lecturers, and you need to actually propagate the message in academia. The problem is that we have a shortage in this country of natural elites. We have this idea that in order to comment on certain subjects or in order to have an opinion, you have to be credentialed. So if you're not waving around an Ivy League degree when you're giving your long tirade on economics, then people don't really take you seriously. And I think that's a problem. I think people that aren't credentialed should absolutely have a voice, because everyone's affected by economic movement. And economics is ultimately about human action. So why wouldn't humans be able to comment on those kind of issues without credentials? It doesn't make sense to me why there's this arbitrary standard that you need something in order to have an opinion. That just, it does not register with me. But I do think that because that is the system that we find ourselves in, unfortunately, the only way it's going to change, and I don't have a lot of hope for it changing because academia is just gone, but the only way that it does change, and the off chance that it does, is you have a lot of people that are libertarian and liberty-minded get into academia and start talking to people, start talking to students, start giving lectures, start giving long 2-hour speeches on Austrian economics. You need to counter the statist indoctrination in academia in order to change academia, because the vast majority, I would say that at least 80% of college professors, and I'm probably being extremely charitable, are statists. So I'm going to put it this way. We need libertarian college professors. We need libertarian economics experts. We need libertarian intellectuals. That's how I'll give it to you. We need people to get into academia, but the problem is, a lot of people don't want to get into academia because it's a money pit, right? I mean, you're jumping into a bottomless pit when you go to college because college is so expensive. And a lot of people just, can't afford it and think it's a waste of their time. And for those people, as libertarians, activism is probably the better way to go. But for the particularly gifted, then people that can also incidentally afford a degree and not get themselves into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, they should pursue it.
Yeah, and not to mention the time and other things that goes into pursuing a PhD or whatever. It's rather. I wonder if podcasting is going to change all this. It should be interesting to see how that impacts things. I don't know if there's any way that. I wonder if there's. I've talked to some people like Thaddeus Russell and asked them. I mean, I don't know if there's any way to change the whole. That maybe there's something about academia that attracts a certain personality that's just more likely to be authoritarian.
I think so.
I was listening to this, listening to Stephen Hicks a while ago, and he was talking about how the Germans in the 1920s were also educated. And I'm thinking
intellectual minds that everybody looked up to.
And what did they end up doing with that?
Well, about 20 years later, they slaughtered 6 million people on the low end.
Well, not just the Jews, but yes. I mean, the wars, and I'm thinking it was just, and this is something I've learned too, is that a lot of things get erased from history, and the reality that so many of the intellectual class were all the way behind the Nazis is just thrown out the door. I'm not sure what the reasons were, and this is one thing that I won't be surprised if in 50 years from now the academics are going to try to pretend that these COVID policies weren't pushed by a bunch of PhDs and other people like that.
Well, academics and intellectuals have this thing that they like to do where whenever the current thing is going on, they'll be 100% on board with it and they'll be down with it and they'll be talking about how, oh, this is great and this is something that we support because this is the smart thing to do. And then 20 years down the road, when it turns out, oh, whoopsie, that wasn't the smart thing to do, and we actually ruined a lot of people's lives, you're going to see a lot of the same academics and intellectuals that supported these policies say, huh?
Yeah.
Me? No, I didn't support that. No, that was a terrible policy.
Oh yeah. Well, it's it's the same way the so-called progressives of today will try to erase history about some things that they supported in the past too. They were big supporters of alcohol prohibition, for example, and they don't talk about that at all.
Absolutely.
And kudos to you for knowing a lot of these things that I definitely did not know when I was 18. I wonder how my learning would have been different if of course I just had access to what was at the library. So
in a way, thank God for the internet, honestly.
Yeah, I actually at 17, one of the first political books I read actually was The Prince by Machiavelli. And that wasn't a libertarian book, but it was just a very interesting book. And I later gravitated to Thomas Paine and to Thomas Jefferson from there because those were people I knew about. And I don't encounter very many libertarians who have read a lot of Thomas Jefferson, but I have read a lot of Thomas Jefferson, and that's certainly somebody who is worth reading. The essays and the speeches are good, and he didn't really write very many books. But then you get his letter collection, get some of his letters, and some of his letters are just absolutely brilliant. And that was so much of how people communicated back then. And he had a system where many of his letters actually got preserved. He actually had this thing where he would hold the pen and would attach to another pen and would write a second letter. So that would keep copies with the same amount of effort. So
Jefferson was an innovator. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that about him. But aside from being, an intellectual mind and one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson was a genius. The guy was an innovator and an inventor. I mean, didn't he have like several? I don't know if it existed at that time. Did he have several patented inventions?
I can't remember exactly what he did back then, what his patent inventions were, but he was very, very creative. Did a lot of things.
Yes. Very smart man.
Life. Yeah. And a father, and of course, born into a lot of wealth, but certainly used what he had, and I think certainly left the world a better place than he found it. So, yeah. So, are you maybe thinking about college or not thinking about college, or what's in your plans for now? Is just
I haven't made that call yet, but I can tell you this: I'm not necessarily attracted by academia.
Yeah.
I think in some ways it's a waste of time. In a lot of ways, it's a waste of money. And I just don't really know if academia has much to add to the conversation for people that have, already read everything, right?
Yeah.
You did ask the question about academia though. Is there any hope? And like, I guess I concocted or conjured up a better answer to that question while we were talking. I think that, how Christians and religious people talk about how America and the world, what's going to save us is that we need a revival, right?
Yeah.
We need a revival of Christian ideals, and we need people to be committed all around the country. We just need a fiery revival, right? Well, I think we need a fiery revival of liberty.
Yeah.
We need people all around the country to be on board with us. We need everybody from the factory worker to the intellectual to be on board with liberty. and to understand the concept of liberty and to understand what liberty is actually about. I think that the only way that we're going to see any change in academia is if we have liberty-minded intellectuals. And as much as I might have some bias against intellectuals, I mean, it is a necessary part of society to have people that are smarter, at least on paper, than others. And if we can have people that are smarter, at least on paper than others, that also happen to be libertarians, I see that as a win-win.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be the knowledge problem, and that there is way too much knowledge that nobody can be an expert on absolutely everything. I mean, the doctor goes to the auto mechanic and hires the auto mechanic to fix his car. The auto mechanic goes to the doctor and hires the doctor to heal his body when he's sick. So that's how we got richer to begin with. It's if we all had to be expert, know how to do everything, we'd end up doing a lot of things and doing a lot of things not very well. There's always been a specialization there. So
the division of labor is a very interesting thing, because I mean, it used to be that you could go to the doctor, the preacher, the barber, and you could go to the doctor, the preacher, the barber, the sheriff, all in one office. And that's just not an efficient way of doing things, because you got one guy wearing a lot of hats. So you need people to do certain jobs. You need division of labor. You need specialization of labor, more importantly. You need people that are good at one thing, do that one thing, and not try to do a million other things. And I think that's where I come down on that whole argument.
Yeah, so I mean, academia is going to be interesting because I think there's always going to be somewhat of a need for people who want to study things like economics, and certainly we need the research institutes and people doing medical research and stuff like that. But I don't know what's going to happen with all that. It seems like to me there's a natural maybe where attracts certain people who kind of see the world as a chessboard and see all the citizens of the world as pieces on that chessboard. So I don't know if we can ever get away from that. I don't know if academia is always going to attract people who are somewhat authoritarian. And to me, that's part of the problem.
I think academia is attractive to people that want to have power over others.
Yeah.
I think you get this sense, number one, of self-worth, right? Because you have all these degrees hanging on your wall, and you get this sense that, hey, I'm pretty smart, so want to hear my ideas. And then it goes from want to hear my ideas to my ideas are better than everyone else's ideas, and if you don't believe that, then we're going to force my ideas on you because my ideas are just so good. My ideas are so good that they require force, and it's going to be for your own good that we're going to force my ideas on you. And that's whenever, I'm not on board with that.
Yeah, I don't know where and that was the interesting part of when academia decided they were going to abandon free and open debate, which everything you're seeing happening right now with academia is not. If you've been paying attention, you shouldn't be surprised by it. Exactly. It's been brewing for, as whether you go back to the 60s or go back to the 90s, it's just. And that's the thing too, is there's some of these sections of society, in spite of the liberty movement, in spite of libertarians, that have just gotten worse.
I agree. I actually think I tend to agree with Rothbard when he says in Anatomy of the State, his point that there has been an alliance between the intellectual wing and the state. I think that alliance has existed for a very long time, because in order to give a sense of legitimacy to state control and to state intervention and to state tyranny, you need smart people talking about how the state is in the right. You need people that are considered smarter than everyone else to tell you that I'm smarter than you and I think this is good for you, therefore you should follow this. And that gets a lot of people on board. It's not enough. It's not enough for an authority figure. Well, for some people it is. But for the more questioning minds, it's not enough for some authority figure to say, hey, do this because I said so. But whenever you have an intellectual, you have an academic, or someone who is considered smart and just a whiz, right? Someone like that say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You should probably do that. Then you're going to have a lot more people on board, because not only do you have an authority figure telling you what to do, now you have an intellectual that is backing up what the authority figure just told you. So that's a pretty potent combination for a lot of people.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that bothers me, and you're in East Tennessee. Did you grow up in Knoxville or Chattanooga or a smaller town?
I grew up in the surrounding areas, just outside of Knoxville. It's a very middle class, relatively rural area.
Okay, relatively rural.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that bothers me, and I don't know if I'm, and obviously we all have this nostalgia for our youth and thinking our youth was the best time to be a kid and all that stuff. But I worry sometimes that it seems like kids are growing up in a much more protected world now where they're not encouraged to take risks. I mean, I had a grandfather who walked 2 miles to school
Mm-hmm.
as a first grader. And, and I would say, watch a black and white sitcom like Leave It to Beaver or something like that, where they're kids and you see how kids, roamed the world back in the 50s and 60s, or even
Not as much sheltering going
yeah,
on.
there's more what I would call helicopter parenting, more also in some cases what Blake Bowles likes to call snowplow parenting. You plow the snow and you've made it easier for your kids. I mean, do you think that I do, although granted we didn't have the social media, but do you think maybe is there something that's making kids? I fear sometimes that kids are softer nowadays, and that they're not going out and breaking bones, having a broken bone and doing that stuff. And it seems to me as though it's maybe preparing you for adult life. Do you think what's going on? Do you think that's true, or do you think that's hogwash?
Well, I would say that the aspect of social media and the internet has kept a lot of kids away from the playground, right? I mean, you see 4 and 5 year olds that look like they're probably not even old enough to wipe their own butt at this point, running around with iPads and iPhones and everything else. So, from an early age, there's that encouragement to immerse yourself in this alternate reality of the internet rather than go out and get life experiences that are going to help you later on. So yeah, I absolutely think that the internet is probably to blame for that, but I don't think entirely. I just think in general, society has gotten way more soft. I mean, I'll give you an example. I talk about this all the time, and so the founding fathers and the people that founded our country and the during the Revolutionary War went to war with the British over something like a 3% tax. That was one of the straws that broke the camel's back. Today, the average American gives upwards of 35 to 40% of their yearly income to the government and grumbles a little bit, but talk about armed revolution or something like that, and all of a sudden you're the odd guy out. And I just think that speaks to how society has gotten way softer. I mean, people have gotten a lot number to the tyranny of the state. People have basically said this when it comes to the state. They've said, well, I don't really like a lot of the stuff that they do, but I mean, we're supposed to follow them, right? So I mean, they're smarter than we are, so I guess I'll just get on board. And that kind of mindset has been, that mindset and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race.
Well, there could be a lot of different changes too. I mean, the fact that the fact that most of us really don't have to worry about ever encountering a grizzly bear, I mean, maybe in East Tennessee, you still have to worry about it. I grew up in West Virginia, so you might have to worry about that too.
Not grizzly.
Or worry about
go up in
fighting
the
off.
woods, and you'll go up in the mountains, and black bears are pretty prevalent. So.
Okay, black bears, yeah. Okay, so bears are pretty scary no matter what kind of bears they are. But you and maybe that's part of it too. That just being removed from nature has made us softer. But it definitely seems like we've gotten more that way, especially when there's.
I would say that the internet and the aspect of social media has definitely contributed to, quote, getting away from nature. Because a lot of people are, like I said, immersing themselves in some kind of alternate reality on a screen, myself included, rather than, going out and actually participating in nature and exposing themselves to, I guess, the dangers that do exist by getting out in nature. But at the end of the day, those dangers are part of the natural human condition. And we have this allergy to danger these days. You have parents that raise their kids like, put on a helmet when you ride a bike. You gotta put on your helmet. Yeah. Well, I mean, 1970, 1980, you had kids trying to do wheelies with just their overalls on. So, I mean, I think society has absolutely gotten softer, but I think more than anything else, it's not just the kids, right? I mean, the parents rub off on the kids, and the parents have gotten a lot softer. And you've got parents that not only are, not strict disciplinarians, not to say that is, the necessarily correct way to go, but I mean, you have parents that are not only not strict disciplinarians, but they're also very adverse to any danger at all, even if it's a minor or a minute amount of danger toward their children. Like if it's something that will maybe have the small potential to harm their kids, they won't let them do it. Yeah. And I don't think that's healthy for society. Kids need to not make their own decisions, but kids need to at least get a little bit of life experience, right? I mean, you live your whole life on a screen from 5 years old to 18 years old. You're going to wake up at 18 and be like, what now? I mean, whoa, I know, nobody told me about this. So, I mean, you're not going to get the life experiences that you need to succeed as a functioning adult.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. But I didn't ask. Assuming you're straight, I mean, do you go out and try to pick up girls?
Occasionally.
I mean, you actually go out and,
Not really. I don't think that aspect is Gen Z. It's different.
Yeah.
Millennials is, there's kind of a disconnect there because back in the 1970s and the 1980s, you had kids running around, trying to pick up girls all over the place. Nowadays, I think we fostered a culture that is kind of adverse to, I won't say adverse to dating, but with social media, and it's like you don't want to blame everything on social media, right? I mean, in general, it's just how culture has changed. But you see people waiting until like the age of 30, their late 20s to get married, and that's just not something that you saw no more than 20 years ago. And maybe it's a positive change, maybe it's a negative change. I mean, I won't comment on that, but I can say this: I know that Gen Z is not in any hurry, and millennials certainly aren't in any hurry. Gen Z is in about as much hurry to get married as the millennials are to have kids, and that's not very big. That's not a very big hurry.
Yeah, I that's definitely changed too. And I don't know what happened. Did you growing up get a lot of? Was there a lot of feminist stuff shoved down your throat too, or not? I mean, because
no,
I don't.
Not in my environment. But
I think it depends on
feminism has definitely had an impact on the culture, and I'm not sure that it's a positive one.
It seems like a lot of that crap really doesn't get shot down, thrown at younger people until they get to college. But then they get to college, because I've noticed if a woman has not been to college, she's not preaching a lot of this crap. But if she's been to college, she's been part of the she's heard the spew about all men being rapists and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I don't know how that makes a difference, but yeah, it's definitely
Um,
something.
there are higher expectations these days, right? I mean, you have a lot of girls out there that think that the ideal man is 6 foot tall, makes $400,000 a year, and has a southern accent. They want to build their ideal man, right? It's like Build a Bear. They want
Yeah,
they want to put together arbitrary standards for what makes the perfect man, and if you don't fit all of them, then you're out of luck. So
yeah,
I mean, that's a side point, but I think you see a lot more of the younger generation, turning towards the same sex or whatever, and that might be part of it. I mean,
yeah,
they just don't want to deal with the nonsense that you have to deal with in the heterosexual dating world these days, because the impact of feminism has made women that think that, like I said, I mean, they try to build their ideal man, and then they're not willing to compromise. So it can be
yeah,
hard.
yeah. There's definitely come to this situation, I think, where women have put up so many standards that it's just that aren't possible. I think you used to have a system where all the tens got with the tens, all the nines got with the nines, all the eights got with the eights, all the sevens. So then it all worked out. And some of the happiest couples I know are couples of two people who really aren't that attractive, but because I think they had more reasonable expectations and they realized, but they seem like, well, boy, they just seem like they're really happy together, don't they? And that's
Yeah.
all that really matters. I'm glad they're happy for them.
Exactly. Happiness at the end of the day is all
Yeah,
that counts in
yeah,
relationships. If one person is happy and the other person is miserable, it's not going to be a very good
yeah,
relationship. There has to be a mutual happiness there. And I think we've lost, to some extent, we've lost sight of the happiness in relationships, and we've more gravitated toward, well, this is just something that we're supposed to do, right?
yeah,
So I think we've gotten into this idea that we're going through the motions, right? And we've lost sight of the happiness of relationships and how two people should be happy together, not just be together. Maybe that's just a soapbox feel. I don't know. That's not gonna. I mean, I don't know how much
well,
that would register, but that's just my rent.
well, there's also respect and other things like that. It's a
Respect is a big part of it. We are, as a society, have lost sight of respect almost
yeah,
completely. Like, I mean, compared to the 1980s, and
yeah.
that time period, respect is virtually non-existent.
I will say that in some ways respect has evolved. I mean, I am not proud of the fact that I was a teenager in the '80s and the fact that we were absolutely positively savage toward anybody that we thought might have been gay or even bisexual. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a certain amount of acceptance there now that didn't exist, and it's interesting too because I went to my 30-year reunion, and these people who were gay back in school, they're now openly gay, and everybody's just getting along. It's nice that
Mhm.
we all
In some ways, it's cultural change can be
yeah,
positive. You can have bigotry become less prevalent. You can have, people start to get along more. But then whenever you take, social change and push it to the extreme, you only succeed in pushing people further away from each other, and you only succeed in dividing people more.
yeah,
Um, I think particularly with, and I'm not qualified to comment on it, but I think particularly with racial issues, that tends to be the case, where you are so anxious to make up the dividend for things that happened in the past, that you only succeed in pushing people further away, because you tell people that they are responsible for their ancestors' actions, and
oh yeah,
that's just where I come down on.
that's exactly ridiculous. Yeah, whom are some people in the liberty movement that you admire nowadays, or anybody else in politics or the intellectual world that you admire nowadays?
Oh no, now I got to give off a list, and if I don't get everybody, they'll unfollow me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, Jeff Deist at the Mises Institute is a great intellectual mind. I like Jeff Deist. Dave Smith is the more t-shirt wearing cowboy type that knows the message. He understood the assignment, and he knows how to reach the lay people.
Yeah.
Um, and you have a lot of people in the movement that I very much look up to and admire. I like Lou Rockwell. I think Lou Rockwell is fantastic. I know a lot of people don't like Lou Rockwell, but I like Lou Rockwell, and I've read some of his books, and I think he's a great writer. And you got a guy that was, I want to say, I don't remember if it was Mises or Rothbard's editor or both. And you look at the works of Mises and Rothbard in the English language, and you think, well, I mean, here's a guy that's responsible for some of that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a certain amount of, I don't want to say nostalgia there, but I'm not sure what the proper word would be. When you look at a guy like Lou Rockwell, here's a guy that is really responsible for a lot of the stuff that people read. And he was really as chief editor of a magazine, I understand that the editor is basically in charge of everything that goes into a publication, or making sure that everything is just perfect. So I feel like Lou Rockwell has absolutely been not just a voice in the movement, but he has a better track record of actively participating and contributing than a lot of people I could name. You have a lot of intellectuals out there that put on the suit and jump on TV and talk about these ideas, but the people that are actually out there actively contributing don't get as much credit.
Yeah, there's a lot of different people out there doing a lot of interesting things. Yeah. So also, being from Tennessee, have you met Glenn Jacobs, Kane? Because he's from Tennessee too, I believe.
It's funny you should mention that, because I was invited to attend a university tour that he will be doing pretty soon, and I'm hoping to meet him very soon, actually, probably next month.
I this is one question I wanted to ask you.
Shoot.
Have you all tried to approach Kyle Rittenhouse?
Kyle Rittenhouse is very hard to reach. Um,
Okay.
he is, it's funny. You would think that a guy like Kyle Rittenhouse, being, um, you know, oppressed as he was by state institutions and that kind of thing, would tend to lean a bit more libertarian, especially being a younger person that has the boot of the state brought down on them, and they try
Yeah.
to prosecute you for self-defense. Unfortunately, that's not really the case. He tends to gravitate a lot more. He's a conservative, but he's a much more back the blue type, not really a libertarian. So
Well,
I
did,
think I think that he absolutely is willing to talk with libertarians and everything. But here's where I come down on Kyle Rittenhouse: leave the kid alone, okay?
okay.
The guy the guy is, he just beat the biggest case of his life, right? And it was garnered national attention. Everybody saw him break down in tears on national television. Let the kid live his life for a while, and then
Oh
see what he
yeah.
wants to do. I don't really want to get him involved in a lot of organizations or anything like that. And I wish that people in the conservative world would not, stop caring about the incident and stop propping him up, but stop idolizing him as much. Because I mean, at the end of the day, he needs to be able to live his life, and he needs space. Because I understand, as an 18-year-old, that you don't want a lot of cameras and people in your face, and constantly having to talk to people about your tragic. I'm sure he's experienced PTSD and all kinds of other issues as a result of what happened that night. So we don't really want to talk about tragic events with a million different people and rehash that. It's not good for a young person's development. So yeah, I just say leave him alone, let him live his life.
As somebody who has met some former kid actors as adults,
Hmm.
I fully sympathize with that. And fame definitely messes with kids' heads. I think it's because they're getting a lot of praise and a lot of criticism from people that they do not know. So yeah, that's a good question. And you did, the whole thing about, yeah, there is a lot of truth. I don't, but it would be, but I don't know how it would say, hey, we'll offer you a speaking fee to come speak here. I think in a lot of cases he's just maybe just talking to whoever seems like a friend. I don't know.
And a lot of people want to be your friends whenever
It,
a lot of people want to be your friend whenever you have when you have a case that
yeah,
garners national attention
yeah,
that really speaks
and
to self-defense and gun rights and all that kind of thing, and young people defending themselves. You have a lot of people that want to be your friends, but not
yeah,
everybody actually wants to be his friend. A lot of people just want to use him for whatever grifting, you
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah, and it does bother me also though when people just say, "Well, he's already a Republican." I said, "Well, maybe he'll change his mind." I mean,
Mhm.
instead of just already throwing him here and saying he's here. I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
You have to lump everybody into some kind of
yeah,
on the some quadrant of the so-called political compass, right? I mean, everybody's got to be somewhere. I don't agree
yeah,
with that. I think I've seen a lot of Democrats or people that you would think would be Democrats that are actually relatively conservative, and people that you would think would be conservative that actually have some relatively left-leaning views. And another thing, I use the term left-leaning. I hate those terms. I hate the term right. I hate the term left because I do not subscribe to the whole left-right nonsense. I think that the actual compass, if you really wanted to get into breaking down people's ideology, way over here you have authoritarian and totalitarian, and way over here you have liberty. I think the scale is
yeah,
authoritarianism versus liberty, and different people fall on different, you know, different parts of that scale. But I don't think that right or left. Number one, it's a French. It originated in France, and I'll borrow a line from Michael
yeah,
Malice here. I'm not basing my life on anything French. But yeah, I just don't think that it's the proper way to do things. It's a habit that we've gotten into for decades, and I don't think that left and right leaning and left leaning and far right and far left, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, when you really look at it, people are either authoritarian or they support
yeah,
liberty. They believe in advancing human liberty, both economically and personally. And some people believe in advancing it personally and not economically. And other people believe in advancing it economically and not personally. Therefore, you have a whole scale, right? I mean, if you really wanted to nail down people's political ideology, you'd have to have them take 1,000 question test. You're not going to get
yeah,
accurate results from some 100 question test that you take, and then it puts you on some arbitrary scale, some pinpoint you somewhere on a scale. It just isn't accurate. I
yeah,
mean, people are different. Everyone is different. I come from the belief that I don't think that anyone agrees with another person 100% of the time when it comes to politics, economics, whatever the case may be. I do not believe that there are ideological, I don't believe in ideological mirrors. I think everyone is different. And at least on 1% of issues, people are going to differ. If you set, I believe that if you set two people in a room that you would think would be of the same political mindset, if you set two people in a room which you would think would be of the same political mindset and paid them to do a seminar where you ask them 1,000 questions and everybody has to give their answer and explain their answer, both of them. I think you would find that those people don't agree as much as you would think they do, because people are different, and trying to pinpoint people on compasses is collectivist anyway.
yes, it is. This does make me question that. When I brought up Kyle Rittenhouse, so naturally I'm going to ask about a person who happens to be born on the exact same day as Kyle Rittenhouse. Where is Greta Thunberg going to be in 10 or 20 years? I've got my predictions.
She's a very charismatic young woman, where love her or hate her. She's
Yeah,
actually she knows how to turn heads, right? I mean, she's got the whole grifting thing down pat, and she's got a lot of people that are pushing her
yeah.
to grift and to grift more. A lot of people that are using her, to make money and to gather donations. And I mean, at that point, I mean, I guess she'll just be an activist for the rest of her life. So
I said she's just an actor playing a role, and when I talk about child
she is.
stars, I won't be surprised if she doesn't even make it to 40 and it's either suicide or an overdose. I don't, I
People
don't,
that are
yeah,
exposed to that much fame and
yeah,
worldwide, being on a worldwide stage is hard, and it's
yeah,
especially hard for someone of her age, especially someone who is already clearly a very emotional person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that her emotional, the way that she is, very emotional, and the way that she can get her point across in a very emotional way and appeal to people's conscience and appeal to people's emotion, is useful for a lot of people that want to use her for grifting purposes. And I
Yeah.
think she'll find that a lot of the people she thought were her friends that told her she was the best thing since sliced bread and she was going to be the next big activist were actually just using her. And once she's no longer young, and once she no longer has as much of an appeal because she's no longer young, when she gets into her 30s and her 40s, they're going to drop her like a hot potato.
Yeah. And you know, that's another problem with fame is even though he ended up divorcing her, I mean, I remember Howard Stern wrote in his book said, Allison loved me before I was famous. You you don't really know who your friends are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not and if you and it seems like a lot of these people either go off the rails or don't go off the rails all based on how good or bad their family is. If they have a really good family, like
Family life is
yeah,
absolutely important. I
uh,
mean, you can have someone who is, you know, very depressed and they meet the love of their life or they meet someone they want to spend the rest of their
yeah,
life with, and then all that turns around. So yeah, I think family life is absolutely important, and not just after they become an adult, but I come from the belief, maybe it's because I'm Southern, but I come from the belief that people's raising, and that's what my grandma used to call it, people's raising. I think people's raising matters a lot as well, and
oh yeah,
really will determine how they are as an adult. If you're raised like crap, you're going to be a crappy adult.
yeah. People's raising. That's a good word for it. Exactly. They're grandma's still around.
No, she is not, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, all your any some grandparents still around or
Hmm. Yep.
yeah, that's yeah, yeah. You don't really think about it that much, but you certainly
Hmm.
appreciate them more after they're gone. It's
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. There's more of an appreciation factor there after they're no longer around, and to hear
yeah,
their words of wisdom, right?
and they go back. There's just a link to the past that you don't have. It's I think that's what family gives us too. Is it gives us a past and a future.
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
kids give us a future, and if you don't have that, you're just constantly in the present.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you don't make memories with people, I mean, you'll constantly be living in the present, and it's not going to be a very good life.
yeah,
So you have to have that family connection. I guess I would say
yeah. And
that family connection is important.
in the end too, you know, the it's the realization that also for most of us, our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, they're going to be the only people who really ever cared about the fact that we were alive. Because
Hmm.
most of the world is pretty for. I mean, that's the only way they leave their impact is having kids. Is
Hmm.
the way they make it.
Having children, passing on not just the name but also the memories, and then
Yeah,
they pass it on to their kids, and they pass it on to their kids, and hopefully you're not forgotten somewhere down the line. Um, I mean, I only know back to my I want to say great grandparents, but before that I have no clue. So I think you do get forgotten somewhere down the line,
yeah,
but there's always a record there. So if they want to go and check out their ancestry, then maybe you'll pop up. You could say hi.
yeah. Well, you know, also not necessarily. You may not have the records that go back further than that, so you don't know
Hmm.
who the parents are. It's
Right.
I'm not really sure where all my ancestors are. So,
Hmm.
what kind of travels is what kind of experiences or travels have you gotten to do so far in your activism, or have you just been staying in East Tennessee?
In my activism, not much, but I love to travel. I just recently went to New Orleans and San Antonio. I just got back from there, I believe, in October. It was a very fun experience. It was a longest trip I've ever been on, actually. Um, Longest trip I've ever been on that I can remember. Um, because my earliest memory of about 3 years old is, waking up in West Memphis, Arkansas. So um, it's definitely I love to travel. I like traveling, but I also have I'm a homer, right? So I like to stick around the place that I know and the place that I grew up. And it's not a fantastic place. Okay, it has its problems, but there's always going to be that nostalgia there. For if you grow up somewhere, that's always going to be your home. It doesn't matter where you move around the country or around the world. If you grow up somewhere, you're always going to feel that connection to that place.
Yeah. What else do you have going on besides Liberty Youth Coalition?
Um, I've been talking to a lot of people about a lot of other ventures, which I'm not at liberty to talk about at this point.
Fine.
Um, but but there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. I will tell you that, and stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, stay tuned. Yeah. So, where do you see yourself in 10 or 20 years from now?
Interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever posed that one. Um,
It's more like a job interview question.
yeah, more like a job interview question, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, I really don't know. I don't know. There are so many potential paths that it's almost scary to think about.
Yeah.
You don't really know. You can't really nail it down because you have no clue. And that's why they ask that question at a job interview, because they know you're not going to be able to answer it. And people that give good answers get the job, right? I mean, if you can stumble around and figure out the good answer, then you'll get hired. And if you just stumble around and can't figure out an answer, then they figure that you're not really grounded. You don't really have any definitive future. And at 18 years old, very few people do.
Yeah, that's true. And there's so much you realize that there is to learn. Right?
Yeah, you realize you've still got a lot to learn, even though you thought you knew everything. Um, you absolutely still have a lot to learn. And 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds tend to be, very the world's my oyster, and I can do anything I want to do. So, and then when they get 20, 25, or 25, they start to think, maybe not. Maybe there are a few definitive paths here that I can go, but I'm not gonna go do something that's gonna be remembered in the history books. And some people do. Some people say, you know what? I'm gonna break the stigma. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna make this invention. I'm gonna do innovation. I'm gonna go be a successful entrepreneur. I'm gonna get my name out there and be in the history books, or I'm gonna go run for office and be a politician. And then most people just figure out their path and go down it and live their life, and then they hopefully die at an older age, and they die happy. So that's pretty much all anyone wants. And you have people out there that are exceptional individuals that go down a lot harder paths, and then you have people that just take the path of least resistance. So at 18 years of age, I think most people are trying to figure out what path they're trying to go down. And then about 20, they figured it out. And then about 25, they're like, oh, why did I ever do this?
I don't know if you ever figure out what path you're going to go down. Are there any?
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to. Have you paid any attention to any of the so-called men's gurus lately? Whether it be
Andrew Tate?
Tate, yes, I was thinking of Tate exactly, and full disclosure, I've known about Tate for at least 4 years. Uh, he's a I don't know what I don't
A
know what
very interesting individual.
yes.
Yeah, a very interesting individual. I think that too many young people get into this. They get hung up on these great intellect. Supposedly, well, there's intellectuals, and then there's just the self help, health, wealth, and prosperity types. You have people that talk about how, well, you'll never be happy unless you can have $400,000 coming in a year, and all this other stuff. So I think young people are very, very impressionable. And when you have some 30-year-old guy or 40-year-old guy that's been everywhere and done everything, and he's driving around in a Bugatti, as he likes to call it, and he's got all this money and all this fame and fortune, and he's telling you, hey, here's how you can be like me, and here's how you can get all these women and all these riches and all these cars, and here's how you can get your name out there. And I think that's very attractive to a lot of young people. But the reality is that sadly, if something is too good to be true, then it probably is. And it's looking like right now that he's actually involved in a lot of extracurricular, we'll call it extracurricular activity, that has probably contributed to some of his wealth.
Yeah, I don't know the full disclosure. I did watch a video with Rollo Tomasi who said that he thinks they're mainly going after Tate because of involvement with money laundering.
There's a possibility that he may have been involved with the Romanian mafia. That would make sense. I could see it. I could see it, honestly.
But being involved with alleged sex crimes is more salacious, so they talk about that. I don't know what, and I don't know where he's. There's definitely an anger there, though. That he's a response to the where Western civilization has declined.
I think part of the decline is that I think you need to have people to look up to, right? And people want to have people that they look up to and want to have people that they listen to for advice. But I mean, I think this is just a prime example. Be careful who you choose to be your hero, because, if you choose someone to be your hero and then they disappoint you, then that's really going to have an effect on you. And you have all these young people out there that are like, I'm the top G because I listened to Andrew Tate, and I'm gonna run out with a suit on everywhere I go, and try to be the ideal guy, and get all these girls. And then whenever he gets arrested and it turns out he's not what he seemed to be, that really has an effect on a lot of young people, because again, they're impressionable. They're like, oh well, if this guy could be that way, then what else is going on? Is my life a lie? Those are questions that people have to ask themselves. And unfortunately, most people, when they choose their heroes, they don't do so very well. Like, I mean, you can choose your favorite singer, and then you meet them at a concert, and they're probably going to be a dirtbag, and then you're going to be like, I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have never met him. I would rather have an image in my head of someone than to actually meet them and figure out how they really are, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to disappoint you.
Yeah, there's a lot of what these same guys call success porn out there. Selling you. We'll sell you this course, and after you take this course, you'll make big bucks and stuff like that. And it just doesn't. And I think it's easy to fall prey to that. And and it helps if you just have people that are your heroes in real life. If you go out and find your mentors and find your
mentorship is a huge deal. You have to have people that you look up to in your real life, that you take advice from and that you come to when you have a problem. But as far as having people talking to you through a screen about how successful you're going to be if you buy this $400 plan, that usually doesn't work out, because they're just trying to grift. They're just trying to they're trying to scam you into thinking that the only way to be successful is to buy this plan and to do the things that this plan suggests. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be successful. So you separate people into 2 classes, the winners and the losers, right? Well, I mean, it turns out it's not that simple. Nothing's ever that black and white.
And we've got enough in this world, though, that I think we can be really well off. I don't know. Are you is there anybody you're not involved with the Libertarian Party much, are you, or not?
No, I'm not involved with the Libertarian Party. I'm an independent through and through. Okay. I don't identify with any party whatsoever. I've had people try to get me to register with the Libertarian Party. I've told them,
Yeah.
I think partisan politics breeds tribalism. Like there's this image in my head that I get when I see people tell me I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and it's like you are basically carrying either a red or a blue banner in an army of red or blue people, and you're saying, well, I agree with everything that guy says because that's my duty, that's my responsibility to agree with everything that he says and to validate everything that he says, even if I disagree, because that's my team. Like, you got to be a team player. There's this saying in Western culture called "ride for the brand," and what it basically means is that if you identify with one group or another, then you're ride or die. You are with them no matter what. So I don't believe that politicians, I don't believe that people in the political realm, I don't believe that individuals should ride for any brand. I maybe this is radical, but I think you should think for yourself. And I think you should determine your own ideas and not identify with one party or another or one brand or another. Because if you're not careful, what you're going to do is you're going to ride for the brand, and you're going to ride for the brand straight off a cliff, because your party or your guy is going to do something that's going to ruin a lot of people's lives, and then you're going to excuse it because you're just riding for the brand.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting to a few. We don't have much more to ask about, but I did want to ask you, what do you think about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
Okay, so with cryptocurrency, you have to be careful, because there are a lot of coins out there that are scams. But with something like Bitcoin and a few other currencies, the blockchain technology, I think, is well, revolutionary. The way it is designed specifically to be decentralized and immune to centralization, I believe it's the future of money. And I believe that eventually this will have to come about to where central banks will start getting on board with crypto, and this is the danger. They'll start trying to do a central bank digital currency, and instead of having worthless paper in your pocket that's not backed by anything except for a promise, um, I think you will start to see a cashless society. And this is one of the greatest dangers to liberty, because if government can already control your money by inflating or deflating the value. But if they can literally turn off your money supply based on what standards you adhere to, I think that's very dangerous. And a central bank digital currency, I believe, within the next 20 years will be the biggest danger that we who care about liberty will have to fight against, because it will be attractive to a lot of people, right? You don't have to carry cash when you go to the grocery store. You don't even have to use a credit card. All you have to do is just take your central bank digital currency, type in your code or whatever, and you've got fake money that you're using to buy goods. So everybody would get on board with that, right? I mean, it makes it so much more convenient. No more cash register. I mean, all you have to do is go through, get your items,
Yes.
and type in your code. And it's really convenient. But convenience is good, but I think convenience and forsaking liberty for convenience is never good. So the central bank digital currency is a big problem, but cryptocurrency in general, and particularly BTC, I believe is the future of currency. And if we had my
Yeah.
ideal world, I think that's what currency would look like. It would be decentralized, and it would not only be decentralized, it would be built in a way that it is immune to decentralization. And that is how money should be.
I think it's definitely going to go somewhere, but there's a lot of different things that could happen. It seems like there have been a lot of changes just in the last 10 years.
Oh, absolutely.
I still, and I still like paying with cash, but I also find using cash to be extremely frustrating too. I mean, just yesterday I'm checking out and I've got this bill that was $20.96. So I hand the cashier $21, and then I realize, oh, here I got a penny. So I'm expecting to get a nickel back, and instead she hands me back 3 cents, and I'm just thinking, what? And I'm just thinking, and believe me, there's so many times where they just completely screw up anytime they deal anything with cash anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
you eventually you just say, I don't want to deal with these hassles anymore. But
Yep.
yeah, I wondered if you'd done anything with Bitcoin or crypto. It seems like because that's one way you can also
Seems
be
like
a
something all the young people are into.
I don't know if it's something all the young people are into, but But
I
it's
don't
just
know.
something where you
I
can
I
possibly
feel like
get on a project and make
people,
money
there are a
too.
lot of people that are into crypto from a lot of generations.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I'm not making any stereotypes here, but I
no,
like
no,
to
I'm
have
just saying, that I think that crypto is something that is beneficial for everybody
yeah,
because it's especially Bitcoin. And I make that caveat because Bitcoin is one of the only cryptocurrencies that is, actually has potential to become a world reserve currency. Because I feel like Bitcoin, and not just Bitcoin, it's not even Bitcoin, it's blockchain technology. Like I said, it's revolutionary. I mean, you can use blockchain to secure anything. Um, I think you could probably even, and I was talking about this with a guy the other day. Of course, governments would never do this because if we had secure elections, then how would they stay in power? But I think you could secure elections with blockchain technology. And I believe that there's a way to go about that. And I think we could make it so safe and so flawless that people could get on their phone on election day, go to some website, type in the candidates that they want to support, and it would be 100% secure. Blockchain technology is amazing.
yeah. Security around elections is certainly a very interesting prospect. I know there've been
Mhm.
some talk about that. Uh, you know,
In
well, that's
recent
certainly
in
been
recent years,
yeah, yeah, and that brings up the fact too. I think I also think it's a way to promote liberty, hopefully that cannot be circumvented because I don't know how you have to create systems that cannot be thwarted by the
mhm.
by the enemies of liberty. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't think it's possible. I
government
don't think it's
government
possible to have.
hates blockchain technology because it is something that is just designed. It's like think of government as a baby, right? Think of government as a baby. They're running all over the house. They're getting into all kinds of things they don't need to be getting into, and then you put up a baby gate. And it's like, well, I'm not tall enough to get over that gate. I can't get in there anymore. And they scream and whine and kick and throw a tantrum because they can no longer enter that room and get into things they don't need to get into. That's what blockchain technology is. It's a baby gate for government because it's decentralized and it is designed to resist and be impervious to any attempts to centralize it. So
Yeah,
government is trying to figure out how we're gonna regulate this, but they don't realize that it can't be regulated because that's literally how it was designed.
yeah,
And it drives them nuts because they can't control it.
yeah. Uh, is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
Just got a few links for you or a few resources. If you want to follow me, which why would anyone want to do that? But if you want to follow me, you could go to at Ezra for Liberty on Twitter. I'll probably follow you back. Um, if you want to support the Liberty Youth Coalition or learn more about what we're about, number one, you can go to libertylyceum.com. That's libertylyceum.com. And that is the website for now, but we are looking to put up a new website with our new name and everything because we've had a few name changes. We've been workshopping a few things. So we will have a new website up, we hope, by the end of this month or next month. And if you want to support us financially, which we could really use because, we operate entirely off of donations and grassroots, you can do that at www.givesendgo/spark liberty, and you could give to the founding of the Liberty Youth Coalition, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's cool. Of course, I'm on. I'm out there as well. And I'm Chris Baker. I mean, hit like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, I have a novel called Escape from the Village, which you can get on all the platforms. And so, yeah, this has been a great talk, Ezra.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming
thank you
on.
so
And
much for having me on and reaching out. I really enjoyed it. It's been a great conversation.
I'm glad I was able to get a good perspective here. I always like to bring interesting people on here. So we'll see. Thank you very much. And we are out.